Tonight's dinner is a risotto, or risotto, as our friends from across the Atlantic or from here across the Pacific would say. Classic Italian dish, very easy to make. Yes, does obviously include some rice, which I've said on many occasions you're allowed to have in moderate quantities. So the key ingredients are risotto rice or arborio rice, make that good quality rice, and some stock. So you're going to cook the rice with stock. Beyond that, the only other ingredients really that are essential, I suppose, are onion, garlic, and then you can flavour your risotto with anything you like. Whether it's, you can make it a vegetarian one, just have simply vegetables, but I like to have a little bit of protein. So this evening, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do mushrooms, a little bit of zucchini, and some prosciutto, although this in fact is jamon serrano, which is the Spanish equivalent. It's exactly the same, it's air-dried ham. I guess the purists would say you should make your own stock, but I'm just going to have stock out of a packet here. I'm using vegetable stock. I guess if you were making a seafood risotto, you'd probably use a fish stock. But it's a personal choice, and I don't think it's that important. So the first thing we're going to do is just dice our onion. I'm just going to use half an onion. There's just the two of us, so I'm just going to use half an onion. My old mate Marco Pierre White says that you should grate the onion because the last thing he likes is, or wants to see, is big chunks of onion. But I think if you dice your onion nice and finely, and I'll show you how to do that, it's not really sort of necessary to grate. So what I do is I just make some slices horizontally, and this is down towards the root end of the onion. I've put the board here like this because I've got this ledge here, which I can't get down, and this ledge here is for good reason on my yacht, because it stops things sliding off. And then you cut vertically, holding the onion together because it does have a tendency to fall apart, and then you go across that way, and you get some nice fine bits of onion, and I reckon that's fine as grating. So there's our onion, and what I need to do is put on my pan, and you want to use plenty of olive oil, because what you're going to do is you're going to cook the onion until it's soft, until it's translucent. So you need to use plenty of olive oil so it doesn't burn. Whilst that's happening, you might as well put your stock on, and that can be heating up, and that stock needs to be boiling when you add it. 2 or 3 cloves of garlic. We had a fantastic sale up today from Goldsmith, and we're sitting now. It was a 5-hour sale with the following winds. So we had the asymmetric spinnaker up all the way and a full main, and it was just glorious. We're now sitting in the lee of Whitsunday Island at Sawmill Bay. It's still blowing 20 knots. We're in the lee of the island. It's still blowing 20 knots, which means they've got the forecast wrong again. But that's sailing. Okay, so there's our onion and garlic, and I'm going to put that in now. That oil should be sort of sufficiently warm, so there we go. So you're just going to cook that onion and garlic probably for about 3 or 4 minutes, just so that it's translucent. Just going to slice up the mushrooms. I know that some people can do this very quickly. I'm a bit precious about my fingers, being a surgeon. I'd rather just take it a bit more cautiously, and take my time. So that's our mushrooms. I'm going to dice this little bit of zucchini into little squares. You don't want big chunks, because you want the vegetable to cook through in the boiling stock. So that's our zucchini, and I'm just going to cut the jamon into fine strips. And that the ham on will give it a really lovely flavour. Onions are becoming translucent. Stock is coming to the boil. Now, the traditionalists will say that you have to, once you've added your vegetables and you put your rice in, and then the stock is ready to add, the traditionalists will say that you have to add your stock in bit by bit, so that you end up with the right consistency at the end. And that is very important, to end up with the right consistency. You don't want it like porridge, but you don't want a soup either. What I do is I pretty much guess how much stock I need, but it's a good guess. And what I do is I add pretty much all of the stock right at the very beginning, and then let that cook through. And then when we get close to the end of the risotto rice cooking, which is only going to be 14 minutes, the perfectionists would say 15 minutes, you can then judge whether you need to add a little bit more fluid. And what I do at that point is I just top up with some hot water boiling water from the kettle. It has to be boiling water because you don't want to stop the cooking of the risotto rice. Okay. Some people add some white wine at this stage. That's fine. I'm not going to, but if you want to add some wine just to add a little bit of flavour, let the alcohol boil off. I'm going to add my mushroom now. That needs to cook before the stock goes in, so let that cook for about 2 or 3 minutes. Then I'm going to add my zucchini, and I'm going to add my ham. And then I'm going to add my risotto rice. And it's important to just cook the risotto rice in the pan for about a minute or so, just to bring it up to temperature before you add the stock. The last thing you add, of course, is the stock. Now, as far as risotto rice is concerned, how much? Most recipes will say 80 grams per person. I think that's a bit much. As I said, if you can just try and moderate things like rice and potatoes and those sort of things in your diet generally, I think that's better. So I actually go for 50 grams per person. That's more than enough. Okay. So most of my risotto, I suppose, probably is vegetables rather than rice. If you go to a restaurant, it's the other way around for obvious reasons, I suppose. You know, most of your dish is going to be risotto rice. But anyway, I'm now going to add my zucchini, and I am going to now add my ham as well. And go in. That ham doesn't need to be cooked because it's already been cured, of course. That's what prosciutto and ham on Serrano is. It's being cured in the open air over many months. But it obviously needs to be brought up to temperature. Okay, it's looking very nice. Mushrooms are cooked. The onions are cooked. The zucchini will cook in the stock. It'll be nice and tender. The stock is just coming up to the boil now. So as soon as I'm going to add the risotto rice now and bring that up to heat, up to temperature. Because as soon as you add your stock, you want it to be boiling. You don't want it to stop cooking, and for this pan here to bring it up to temperature, you want to have this boiling. The minute you want this at the same temperature as this, so the cooking process doesn't stop. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to put my kettle on, bring that to the boil slowly, so that when we get to the end of the cooking, if it's looking a little bit dry, then I'm just going to add a little bit of, just add a little bit from that. It's unlikely to be too much. It's unlikely to be sort of soup-like. It's much more likely to be too dry. That is now boiling, pretty much. So I'm going to add that now. I'm going to add the whole lot, and she starts to cook straight away. Okay, and it's now 10:02. So we're going to be done at 14 minutes, just before 5 past. By all means, give it a bit of a stir. You don't have to stir it constantly, but sort of every 3 or 4 minutes, give it a bit of a stir, and that's it. So we'll come back in about 15 minutes. Okay, we're back, and one thing I should have mentioned at the beginning is some seasoning, and there's a little bit of salt in the stock, so you don't need to add very much. I'm just going to add a little bit now. We're coming up to sort of 13 minutes since we started, and it's looking extremely good. Some pepper. I have added a little bit of water from the kettle because it was looking a little bit dry, but now with 1 minute to go, that consistency is just perfect. And once again, as my old mate Marco says, when you actually plate it up, you want it to walk across the plate, which means, you know, it just spreads across the plate. You don't want to sort of drop it down and it sort of, you know, there's a big splodge like porridge. And there are two other critical ingredients to add just at the very end, and that is a slab of butter, just to give it some creaminess, maybe a little bit more. And finally, grated parmesan. Make it fresh parmesan, don't use the stuff out of a packet. Freshly grated parmesan. You don't need then to put the parmesan on the top of the dish when it's plated. Okay, you just mix that through and it will melt a good portion of parmesan. Give it a final stir through. That's exactly the right consistency. We're now on 15 minutes. Let's turn that off. Beautifully creamy. The rice will be al dente, exactly the same as spaghetti. Firm to the tooth, but not crunchy, and certainly not stodgy. I'm just going to plate that up now, and as you can see, it just, as Marco says, it walks across the plate. Doesn't that look beautiful?
Yum!
Yum! And one other final thing is a little garnish of parsley. That's it. So that was 15 minutes of preparation time, 15 minutes of cooking time, and it couldn't be simpler, and it couldn't be tastier.